When it comes to marketing agencies, there's a lot of agencies out there, and you got to assume if we're all in business, we're all doing good work. And at the end of the day, sometimes it really just comes down to the relationship and just having that right feeling with the agency you're going to choose to work with. We can all come up with different strategies and different levels of creativity. We all know how to do the appropriate research that goes into it and determining target markets and how do they want messaging delivered to them and that kind of stuff. When it comes to creativity, some days you come up with the best ideas and some days I'll come up with the best ideas. But a lot of times I feel like you just need to find the right fit. You just have that feeling that we are going to work well together. We're going to communicate well together. We're going to support each other well together. And that relationship is just so strong and it's got to be a win-win situation.
This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fully Managed by Penji podcast, the podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you in your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's partnership coordinator, and I'm joined here today with Kevin Homer, president of Navitas Marketing. Thank you so much for coming on with me today.
Shannon, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's nice to have a fellow Philly native on the show. I always love having anyone that's someone understands what living here is like.
That's right. So yeah, we're in the best market in the country, I think, and let's get this John started.
Oh, how do you feel about John Morgan? Okay.
We're not going to touch that one.
Keep you on your toes, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how many of our viewers know what you're talking about with John Morgan.
He comes up a lot on the podcast.
Good for him. That's what branding's all about, right?
I know. Yeah, it's just...
you recognize that brand and that campaign, and obviously he's doing something right. So
consistently on my mind at all times. He lives in there rent free. It's actually sufferable. Anyway,
whether you like it or you don't, we're talking about it, so it's done its job.
That's marketing. Okay. So could we start by you telling us a little bit about your work and like your journey to this point? That would be great.
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking. You probably didn't expect this, but we're actually going to start 60 years ago. We are a family business, and my grandfather started a photo finishing lab over 60 years ago. Last year was our 60th anniversary, which evolved into our family printing company, which then evolved into a printing and graphic design company. As far as we know, we were the first printing company in the greater Philadelphia market to use computers for graphic design. So
that's awesome.
We've been offering graphic design for probably about 45 years. I don't know that exact date. And we offered a lot of marketing services through our printing company. We built our first website in 1993, back when a lot of people thought websites were just a trend and just a fad. But if you wanted to be trendy, we were able to help you. And then as the marketing side of our business continued to grow, we actually started off, when I joined the business 15 years ago, I started to evolve the Homer Group into a full marketing agency, with printing being one of our supporting services. And what we found was our brand as a printing company was too strong. The market, we had a really good reputation in the Philadelphia area, and the market knew us as a printing company, and it was really hard for them to get out of that mentality. And we also found that clients who came in on the print side of our business thought of us as a printing company, and they weren't interested in the agency side. You don't go to a printing company for these agency type services. And anyone who came in on the agency side didn't want to buy their printing through us because they just assumed we were buying it externally and marking it up too expensive, all that. So what we ended up doing was, if you can't fight them, you can't beat them, join them, right? So the printing company, the Homer Group, went back to being our printing company. And that's when we started Navitas Marketing. So we established its own brand. We added a few more marketing services. We became a Google partner right when that program came out about 10 years ago. And having both sides of our business, with the Homer Group being our printing business and Navitas Marketing being our agency, we've done really well with having both companies complement each other and work together. We've been able to help a lot of companies who need both, and we're able to kind of utilize us as that one-stop shop, whereas that's typically hard to find.
That actually is one, that was a great explanation, and two, that answers my question about the printing specifically, because I do talk to a lot of marketing agencies, and usually something that they don't list as something that they provide is prints or anything like that. So that's a very interesting segue.
There's a lot of investment into printing equipment, so it's not as simple as a marketing agency just saying, it would be great if we could print this stuff too. It's not worth it for them. I don't care which agency you're talking about. It's just not worth it. You need someone who's truly doing this all day, every day, for it to be worth that type of investment. And technology is always changing. Just like it's always changing for us in the marketing space, it's always changing in that print space also. You need to have the best quality. You need to have the lowest prices. It's got to be the right balance. So, that's why you don't see it very often. But with the foundation for us being the print side of our business, we do have that equipment. We do have the expertise. And even that comes into play. There's a lot of great graphic designers out there who create excellent designs, no question, but they don't always understand the printing process at the end. What kind of paper stock is it going to be used on? Some of the tricks with, crops and bleeds, and, it looks good on a screen, but is it going to look good up on a billboard? And, that kind of stuff. So there is a lot of expertise that comes into it beyond just the strategy of great design and great messaging. You truly need to understand that printing process at the end.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think that you're definitely right that a lot of designers can make amazing work, but they might not be able to contribute to the end product, which is something that's a product that needs to be sold or needs to be distributed, and that may not translate well if they don't know kind of how the dimensions work for that, or how it's going to look when it's like larger or smaller. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And we work with a lot of graphic designers also, so we're always happy to give them those tips and help them understand, like, here's why we need that document saved a little bit differently, or why you want to consider XYZ. It's all about working together, communication. That's where we all succeed, I think.
Oh, that's really kind.
We try. We're very big with relationships around here. So we're not here to compete. We're here to all work together and make sure everyone does well at the end of the day.
That's really good. So that kind of leads into my next question, which is like, what do you think is the most critical component to factor in when creating a successful marketing campaign? Do you think it's communication, like something you just mentioned, or do you think?
I think that is a big piece of it. I always look at it as, when it comes to marketing agencies, a lot of agencies out there, and you got to assume if we're all in business, we're all doing good work. And at the end of the day, sometimes it really just comes down to the relationship and just having that right feeling with the agency you're going to choose to work with. We all have different strategies, or we can all come up with different strategies and different levels of creativity. We all know how to do the appropriate research that goes into it and determining target markets and, how do they want messaging delivered to them and that kind of stuff. When it comes to creativity, some days you come up with the best ideas and some days I'll come up with the best ideas. That's just how it is. But a lot of times I feel like you just need to find the right fit. You just have that feeling that we are going to work well together. We're going to communicate well together. We're going to support each other well together. And as I said before, at the end of the day, that relationship is just so strong, and it's got to be a win-win situation for both the client side and the agency side. We need to work together to succeed. And at the end of the day, the agency's not going to do well without the right types of input from the client, and the client is not going to succeed without having the right agency in place.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think that to have a good relationship with an agency and a client is to be as communicative and as transparent as possible throughout the process, because I think that one, obviously the client wants to know what's going on. Maybe they might not pay attention as much if they don't have to put any kind of input, but it's still important that they know what's going on throughout the process, and that even if they choose not to pay attention to some part, they can go back and check that out, because I think that shows that, you know, you're willing to be not only transparent, like I said, but also just honest with what you're doing at all times, and that guarantees a more satisfactory ending to the campaign.
Or depending on the campaign, hopefully it never ends, right?
Yeah, that would be great, just forever. That's the ideal. Or a referral.
Right, there you go.
That's the best. That's the best for agency industry, is referrals.
It's the best compliment you can get, you know, whether it's a review on Google or a true, you know, introduction to somebody. You know, that's how you know you've done a good job, when they've referred you to someone else.
Exactly. I don't even want to recommend a friend for a job. I'm terrified they're gonna do bad, and then it's gonna reflect on me. So, you know, it is a really big testament to how good your work is when you're willing to recommend it to someone else.
Yeah, and that is a real thing. Everyone's got a different opinion about, you know, working with family, working with friends, recommending family or friends, you know, because it can get you in a sticky personal situation if things don't go well professionally. That's for sure.
Exactly. It's scary to have someone else's actions reflect on you, but you always hope that it's going to be something good when you do that. So it's really nice. So could you kind of talk about one, you didn't really get into your name, which I think people would love to hear about, because I already asked about it before this call, but so why did you decide on Navitas? I won't give in the secrets of what that means. But then also, can you also talk about you say on your website that the business model contains two main components, energy and growth. Can you talk about how these contribute to your work as well?
Sure. So good question. So when we established Navitas formally, which, you know, the service, a lot of the services we offer under Navitas, we had been offering under the Homer Group for a long time. But when we decided to officially launch Navitas, I knew I wanted an abstract sounding name that represented something, that truly meant something. I didn't want to come up with a name just for the sake of it. So I started thinking about, you know, what is it that we do? What is it that we offer? And, you know, how do you come up with an abstract name? So I started dipping into Latin a little bit, thinking about some Latin words that sound kind of abstract, even if they're not. Well, anything related to technology was out the door, because when, you know, there was no technology back then. And I was trying to think of some different words. What do we do? What do we represent? You know, looking up the Latin meaning for passion and hard work, and, you know, a couple different buzzwords, you know, thinking about different marketing words. And finally I landed on energy. The Latin word for energy was Navitas, and I said, we can create a brand around that. So Navitas is the Latin word for energy, and I kind of see it representing two ways. One is the energy that we put into our clients and the work that we do for them. And then we also help our clients find their own inner energy and put it into their sales and marketing approaches.
That's really nice, actually. I did think it was a unique, I guess, way to market yourselves as a marketing agency. I think it's always very funny, the kind of inception in marketing, because as marketing agencies you have to market yourselves, and then you also have to think about that and how different it is from your clients. But I do really like it. It's I talk to a lot of agencies, and there are some that stand out more than others, and so I did like that. And I love brushing up on my Latin.
Yeah, we'll give you that opportunity. Probably haven't had that for a while. If you look at our brand, everything we design and everything we do for ourselves represents some sort of source of energy. So if you look at our website, right on the homepage, we have a video, and it's everything from volcanoes erupting to we have somebody doing a cannonball into the ocean to popcorn popping, because it takes heat and energy to do that. If you look around our office, we have depictions of lightning strikes like I have behind me. We have volcanoes, we have peaceful sunsets, so there's all different types of energy. But we have that type of consistency in our branding, which is so important, and what we try to help our clients do as well.
I think that's fun. I think also showing the variation is very cool for your clients to see, because they see like what the variation of what you can just make surrounding energy, and then that kind of also shows what you're able to do for them.
I hope so. Now for our viewers, next time you're stuck in a thunderstorm and a lightning storm, I hope you think of Navitas.
I know I will. So could you kind of tell me what's your strategy for keeping up on marketing? Because marketing is a constantly changing field. Like, how are you consistently able to create campaigns that are both relevant and successful?
We read a lot. So, there are so many changes and there's so much information and trends to keep up on. But on the positive side, there's also so many different resources and ways to keep up on it. So we try to go to industry conferences where they'll present the latest and greatest. We try to keep up on blog posts. We try to write blog posts, which require research, and you're kind of learning in that process of creating content with the intent of educating. We are a Google partner. So, through the Google Partner Program, we're kind of forced to keep up on all the latest and greatest of pay-per-click and display ads. We attend trade shows, so we see what others are doing, and we keep up with those trends, and we're then able to translate that for our clients who are attending trade shows. We are a Meta agency partner, so that allows us to keep up with all the latest and greatest when it comes to Facebook and Instagram. There's a lot of different sources, and then of course just the strength of the team. So what I'm keeping up on isn't necessarily what she's keeping up on and what he's keeping up on, but that's okay, because we're all working together, and that collaboration is what ultimately keeps us all in check and allows us to provide that latest and greatest value to our clients.
I really like that. I love agencies and marketers that are consistently trying to keep learning, because I think that the marketing field is obviously not stagnant, but it's unique in a way that anything that involves advertising, I guess, in a way, is constantly changing based off of people's interests, and it's really almost fun to be able to delve into the different ways in which you can catch someone's attention.
It definitely keeps things interesting. I mean, I like that every day and every month is different. Some people like going to that job where you just kind of have your routine and it's the same type of routine every day. Like, I love that every client is different, every strategy is different. Whatever strategy you come up with, it's going to change. There is importance to a business plan and a marketing plan, but I think it's so important to remain flexible within that plan, because industry trends change, technology changes, you don't always know what's coming. So, it's good to have a plan, but it's also good to reevaluate that plan and shift, as you need to. And I think it keeps things interesting. I love that I can't tell you what a typical day looks like. That's intentional. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, you have to be flexible in this field, and I mean, I guess in a lot of them, but I think that it's really important to be able to adapt to your clients' needs as well, because if you do, you can have a plan, and it's good to have a plan always. Obviously, you shouldn't be winging everything that you're doing, but things change constantly, especially during marketing campaigns, and it's good to be able to adjust to your clients' needs during that process, because you can have a good plan that they're really happy with, but then they don't see something that they want to see, or it's not the projected results that you expected, and they want to change, and you have to pivot, and that is sometimes difficult, but it's also a great part of maintaining a good client relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the great things about having so many reporting tools at your disposal now, that you can see, especially on the digital side, you can see what's happening and make changes on the fly, even if you weren't planning to. Like, one of the things we look at when we're running a Google display campaign or a Facebook ad campaign is a term called ad fatigue. But sometimes when you've got the same ads being placed in front of the same audience for too long, they get tired of seeing it. They get fatigue. So, typically when you launch a campaign and, there's some AI involved in, the learning phase of whatever platform you're in, and you start to see that things, you start off decent, and then things start to get better and better as you're optimizing, your targets and your audience and all that. But eventually, as you're going up, eventually it does start to plateau. And that's where that ad fatigue comes in. That why isn't it getting better? Because you keep placing the same stuff in front of the same people, and they're tired of seeing it now. So there are certainly times where we will launch a campaign and we think it's going to last 4 or 5 months, but then the data shows that ad fatigue is starting to kick in, and we'll maybe create some new designs or new messaging, or we got to change something up after 2 or 3 months because the data shows us that wasn't our plan. But it's just what you got to do. And the proof is there that, things were going great. We started to plateau, and now it's time to pivot and do something a little bit different, because ultimately, it's all about the results. It's all about the data.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And it's good to be able to know when that happens, like pay attention to the data and figure out when you have to do that and when you should start. Is there ever a point where you see this kind of plateau and you pivot, or maybe you decide not to for whatever reason, and it actually goes back up? You know what I'm saying?
If we don't pivot, or if we do pivot?
If you don't pivot.
If we don't, it happens. Sometimes, when you see changes in data trends, whether things are getting better or things are, starting to plateau or go down, sometimes it's very obvious what's causing that, and you are able to tell that it's because of this or it's because of that, and here are the changes we can make. Sometimes, realistically, you don't always know, and you're making an educated guess, but it is a guess. You're trying something, and we'll see how it goes. With print marketing, and of course I have a printing company also, so certainly not to bash print, but when you print something, once it's printed, it's done. And if you decide to make a change, you've got to redo it. That's what it is. With digital marketing, you can make those changes on the fly. So, not that we want to change campaigns every other day, but if you have a campaign going and you want to try a change and see how it goes, you make that change, you try it for a couple weeks. If it went well, great, keep doing it. If it didn't go well, then we try option B, we try something else. But at least you have that ability to kind of make changes on the fly. You can't do it too quickly because you need enough data to actually believe what you see. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll have clients who will ask, how do things go today? And then how do things go today? And then how, we don't look at it on that day-to-day basis. We need more data to really evaluate over a couple of weeks, how are things going? Because, if we were judging things day by day, you would never get anything done. You can't pausing and, changing things that often. But, you give it a couple weeks, you see how it's working out, and you continue to optimize and change as you need to.
How do you communicate with clients during the process that are like that want to see evidence constantly, consistently, about what's going on?
I think a big part of agency life in general is about educating the clients. So, we don't want to just give them information or give them updates, but we really try to educate our clients and make sure they understand what does this data represent and why are we doing certain things for them. And so, going back to your question, when the clients do want that, that day-to-day update, it's really just kind of explaining, I understand why you're asking this, but here's why that doesn't work. And, I don't think we've ever had an instance where someone hasn't ultimately understood what I was explaining to them, or one of our staff members was explaining. But it's just that, if you're not in that space, it's not the way you think. So, as we kind of understand, that there's machine learning involved every time you make changes, and, we need enough data to truly understand what the trends are. And, you see bad data for one day. Well, is that because the campaign isn't successful, or because the way the market and your audience, does whatever it is they do, they're just not really interested in that particular day of the week? Maybe we end up learning that we have a great campaign, but let's only run it on certain days. Or we start to see trends that we have a great campaign, but let's only run it during certain hours of the day for whatever reason. And sometimes there's logic involved that, we just kind of understand this is how our audience would think and would react. And sometimes it's following the data and saying, I don't always know why we're seeing these trends, but these are the trends and we're going to embrace what's working. So, but it's all about that communication and education, I think, to help them understand why we're doing certain things.
Yeah, I think that goes along with the transparency, I think, is, they want to know why what's happening is happening, and they're hiring you because they probably don't understand those things.
Sure. There are things that they know that they need to teach us about their business for us to succeed better. And obviously it's why they're hiring us. There are things about our business that they need to understand and learn so that they can do their jobs better also. And I always think, you do your job, I'll do my job. At the end of the day, we'll all succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever had trouble with a very niche business that maybe was kind of difficult to navigate making a campaign for because you didn't know a lot about it?
Yes, but do I say it on camera knowing that they may be watching?
I mean, if it was a successful campaign, you don't have to say their name or anything. You just say the type of industry, I suppose.
Yeah, no.
Or you don't have to at all.
It's not necessarily from a campaign perspective. There are certain industries that are a little bit harder to work in general. It could be difficulty in how they reach their target audience. It could be just the expectations of the businesses we're working for just aren't always super reasonable, or again, going back to what we were discussing before, just don't always understand the process as well, or don't want to hear the process as well. They don't want to understand that process. There are certainly industries that are a little bit easier to work with than others. It could be based on an audience, it could be based on a couple different factors. But again, I think as an agency, it's really just our job to make sure that we're remaining as flexible as possible as we go from client to client or vertical to vertical, and then just our ability to learn. We need to understand our clients' businesses almost as well as they understand it themselves, for us to do well for them. And I know that there are some agencies that specialize in specific industries, which the benefit of doing that, working with an agency like that, is that they're truly experts in that field. The disadvantage is sometimes it's hard to differentiate some of your clients, and how do you truly stay creative and strategic for each of your clients when you've got so many of them that all do the same thing and ultimately are kind of competing with each other. So I like that for us at Navitas, we're very broad and we work with so many different industries. And I think it gives us an opportunity to stay creative and more strategic for each of our clients, because we can bring something new to the table for each one, since we don't have as many clients in that specific space. But it's also a little bit more work on our part, that we've got more learning to do when a client does come in, and we have to learn what they're doing and how they operate and who is their target market, target audience, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of fun though. I think that is a heavy debate that happens in the agency world, is whether to niche down or not. I think that you brought up a couple points that are usually what I hear from the side of don't niche down. And that's, I don't think you're really saying don't. It's just, sometimes it works for some people and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have a good friend, and I know we talked about should you work with friends or not, but I had a friend who he's an attorney, and they were looking for a new agency to manage their marketing, and they wanted someone We kind of went through what I was helping him kind of evaluate their current agency and, why they were doing certain things and results and all that. And ultimately they decided they wanted to make a switch, but the partners decided it was really important for them to work with someone who specialized in the legal field.
Mm-hmm.
Everything they were looking for is absolutely something we could have done. And I know we would have done it well. But since that was something they requested, I said, I have the perfect agency for you. And there's another agency that we do work for. We have a lot of good relationships with a lot of different agencies, which I'm very happy about. And one of them happens to specialize in legal. And I said, if you're looking for that specialty, absolutely go talk to them. And they're working together. And I know that things have been going very well. And both sides have been very happy. So the agency is thrilled that I gave them a really strong lead. My friend and his firm are thrilled that they've seen a really strong increase. At the end of the day, like, I know I've done well by my partners and by everyone else, and that's what's important. Everyone is succeeding.
That's really nice.
In their case, it was important that they had someone who specialized in that. If that wasn't a requirement, we would have been a great fit also. You got to decide what's best for you.
Yeah, that's really nice. And it's also nice not to like push yourself or your industry on this person just because, you like think that you can do it. It's like they, you felt out their comfortability and they wanted, to go a different route. And that's good that that's successful and that, you're also helping out your partners, which is, really nice and a good relationship to have because you have to be able to consider the client and like what their wants and needs are. And,
yeah.
It's always nice to get a new customer, but it's also nice to be able to, make them happy. That may not be you, but it's still nice to.
It's working, and I took care of a partner. I don't like to use the word vendor. I guess technically that's what they are. In our accounting software, they're listed under vendors, but I look at it as their partners. So if my partner is succeeding, ultimately we will too.
Yeah, and that's really good. That's that's actually a very wholesome note to end on because we are actually out of time. But
wow. Time flies when we're having fun.
I know that was fun, and I know that my favorite part about this podcast, I swear I'll say this every time, people are gonna get tired of it, but learning on the podcast is my favorite thing. I love to learn. It's my, I didn't know that I would learn this much on the podcast, and that's like also fantastic. So thank you for coming on and teaching me some things.
Well, you asked me earlier, how do we keep up with learning as things are changing all the time? So obviously we, you didn't tell us before, but now we know your answer also.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's very important in the marketing industry. And so many, I think everything, you should constantly be learning about what you're doing because that makes it more fun. And if it doesn't, then maybe you should be in a different industry.
Yes. And I think in the marketing world, if you're not one step ahead, you're already 2 steps behind.
Exactly. Hate consuming media this heavily, but it's okay. That's how you do it. Well, thank you so much for coming on with me today. I really appreciate it again. And everyone watching or listening, don't forget to like and subscribe, see and hear more stories like Kevin's, and learn a little bit just like I get to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.